This leads again to the mention of mysticism. No mere inquiry into the genesis of a thing can throw any light upon its essential nature, and it is hence immaterial to us how mysticism historically arose. But essentially, mysticism is the stressing to a very high degree, indeed the overstressing of the non-rational or super-irrational elements in religion, and it is only intelligible when so understood. The various phases and factors of the non-rational may receive varying emphasis, and the type of mysticism will differ according as some or others fall into the background. What we have been analyzing, however, is a feature that recurs in all forms of mysticism everywhere, and it is nothing but the creature consciousness stressed to the utmost and to excess. The expression meaning, if we may repeat the contrast already made, not, quote, feeling of our createdness, end of quote, but, quote, feeling of our creaturehood, end of quote. That is, the consciousness of the littleness of every creature in face of that which is above all creatures. A characteristic common to all types of mysticism is the identification in different degrees of completeness of the personal self with the transcendent reality. This identification has a source of its own with which we are not here concerned and springs from moments of religious experience which would require separate treatment. Identification alone, however, is not enough for mysticism. It must be identification with the something that is at once absolutely supreme in power and reality and wholly non-rational. And it is among the mystics that we most encounter this element of religious consciousness. Raysaillac has noticed this in his Essai sur les fondements de la connaissance mystique, Paris, 1897. He writes, page 90, it's all in French, and I apologize because I don't know French, but we'll just read it anyway. Le mysticisme commence par la crainte, par le sentiment d'une dénomination universelle, invincible, et devient plus tard un désir d'union avec ce qui domine ainsi. How you like that? And some very clear examples of this taken from the religious experience of the present day are to be found in W. James. The perfect stillness of the night was thrilled by a more solemn silence. The darkness held a presence that was all the more felt because it was not seen. I could not any more have doubted that lie was there than that. I could not any more have doubted that lie was there than that I was. Indeed, I felt myself to be, if possible, the less real of the two. This example is particularly instructive as to the relation of mysticism to the feelings of identification, for the experience here recounted was on the point of passing into it. The element of energy or urgency. Three, the element of energy or urgency. There is finally a third element comprised in those of tremendum and majestus, awfulness and majesty, and this I venture to call the urgency or energy of the numinous object. It is particularly vividly perceptible in the opierge or wrath, and it everywhere clothes itself in symbolical expressions: vitality, passion, emotional temper, will, force, movement, excitement, activity, impetus. These features are typical and recur again and again from the daemonic level up to the idea of the living God. We have here the factor that has everywhere more than any other prompted the fiercest opposition to the philosophic God of mere rational speculation who can be put into a definition. And for their part, the philosophers have condemned these expressions of the energy of the noumen whenever they are brought onto the scene as sheer anthropomorphism. Insofar as their opponents have, for the most part, themselves failed to recognize that the terms they have borrowed from the sphere of human cognitive and affective life have merely value as analogies, the philosophers are right to condemn them. But they are wrong insofar as this error notwithstanding these terms stood for a genuine aspect of the divine nature, its non-rational aspect, a due consciousness of which served to protect religion itself from being rationalized away. I understood exactly 0% of that last paragraph. For wherever men have been contending for the living God and for voluntarism, there, we may be sure, have been non-rationalists fighting rationalists and rationalism. It was so with Luther and his controversy with Erasmus. And Luther's Omnipotentia Dei and his De Servo Arbitrio is nothing but the union of majesty in the sense of absolute supremacy with this energy in the sense of a force that knows not stint nor stay, which is urgent, active, compelling, and alive. In mysticism, too, this element of energy is a very living and vigorous factor, at any rate in the voluntaristic mysticism, the mysticism of love, where it is very forcibly seen in that consuming fire of love whose burning strength the mystic can hardly bear, but begs that the heat that has scorched him may be mitigated, lest he be himself destroyed by it. And in this urgency and pressure, the mystic's love claims a perceptible kinship with the Opierge itself, the scorching and consuming wrath of God. It is the same energy, only differently directed. Love, says one of the mystics, quote, is nothing else than quenched wrath, end of quote. Jesus Christ. The element of energy reappears in fixed speculations on the absolute as the gigantic, never-resting active world stress, and in Schopenhauer's demonic will. At the same time, both these writers are guilty of the same error that is already found in myth. They transfer natural attributes which ought only to be used as ideograms for what is itself properly beyond utterance to the non-rational as real qualifications of it, and they mistake symbolic expressions of feelings for adequate concepts upon which a scientific structure of knowledge may be based. In Goethe, as we shall see later, the same element of energy is emphasized in a quite unique way in his strange descriptions of the experience he calls, quote, demonic, end of quote. Chapter 5, the analysis of Mysterium. Let's try some German here. Ein Begriffener Gott ist kein Gott. And that apparently means a God comprehended is no God. Tersteegen, that's by somebody named Tersteegen. 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 Ein Begriffener Gott ist kein Gott. But God comprehended is no God. We gave to the object to which the numinous consciousness is directed the name Mysterium Tremendum, and we then set ourselves first to determine the meaning of the adjective tremendum, which we found to be itself only justified by analogy because it is more easily analyzed than the substantive idea mysterium. We have now to turn to this and try as best we may by hint and suggestion to get to a clearer apprehension of what it implies, Number 4, the wholly other. W-H-O-L-L-Y. The wholly other. It might be thought that the adjective itself gives an explanation of the substantive, but this is not so. It is not merely analytical, it is the synthetic attribute to it, i.e. tremendum adds something not necessarily inherent in mysterium. It is true that the reactions in consciousness that correspond to the one readily and spontaneously overflow into those that correspond to the other. In fact, anyone sensitive to the use of words would commonly feel that the idea of mystery, mysterium, is so closely bound up with its synthetic qualifying attribute, awful, tremendum, that one can hardly say the former without catching an echo of the latter. Mystery almost of itself becomes awful mystery to us. But the passage from the one idea to the other need not by any means be always so easy. The elements of meaning implied in awfulness and mysteriousness are in themselves definitely different. The latter may so far preponderate, and the religious consciousness may stand out so vividly that in comparison with it, the former almost sinks out of sight, a case which again could be clearly exemplified from some forms of mysticism. Occasionally, on the other hand, the reverse happens, and the tremendum may in turn occupy the mind without the mysterium.